Worthless junk. That's exactly what the judge called the old veteran's medals in front of a packed courtroom. The old man said nothing. He just stood there, taking the humiliation while lawyers smirked and spectators whispered. No one there knew who he really was. No one knew what those medals meant. But when a four-star general burst through the courtroom doors, everything changed. Some debts can never be repaid. Is this some kind of joke? Judge Harold Brennan's voice carried across the courtroom with the sharp authority of someone who'd spent 20 years on the bench. He stared down at the old man standing before him, his thin frame barely filling out a suit that had seen better decades. Mr. Walsh, you're asking this court to accept military medals as collateral for a $30,000 civil judgment. Thomas Walsh was 79 years old. His hands trembled slightly as he held a small wooden case, worn smooth by years of handling. Inside, 3 medals rested on faded velvet. He'd carried them to court because they were all he had left. Your Honor, these medals, they're trinkets. The plaintiff's attorney, a man named Rothstein in a suit that cost more than Walsh's car, stepped forward with barely concealed contempt. My client is owed $30,000 for breach of contract. Mr. Walsh signed a business loan he can't repay. His house is in foreclosure. His accounts are empty. And he shows up here with costume jewelry. The courtroom rippled with uncomfortable laughter. Walsh felt heat rise in his face, but he didn't lower his eyes. Your Honor, he said quietly, these medals represent— I know what medals represent, Mr. Walsh. Judge Brennan cut him off, his tone softening slightly but still firm. But this is a civil court. We deal in monetary value. What you're holding, sentimental value aside, is maybe $50 of metal at a pawn shop. They're not for sale. Walsh's voice was steadier now. I'm offering them as proof of character, as a guarantee that I will pay what I owe. I just need time. Rothstein laughed outright. Character, Your Honor, my client gave Mr. Walsh multiple extensions. He defaulted on every payment schedule. Character doesn't pay debts. Judge Brennan looked tired. It was Friday afternoon. He had 12 more cases on the docket. He'd seen 100 sad stories this month alone, and while he sympathized, the law was the law. Mr. Walsh, I'm afraid Mr. Rothstein is correct. Without tangible assets or a payment plan backed by real collateral, I have no choice but to grant judgment to the plaintiff. You have 30 days to satisfy the debt or your remaining assets will be seized. Your Honor, please. That's my ruling. The gavel started to fall. The courtroom doors exploded open. Everyone turned. A man strode in, moving with the kind of authority that made people instinctively straighten in their seats. He was in his early 60s, tall, with silver hair and a bearing that suggested a lifetime of command. He wore a simple dark suit, but on his lapel was a small pin, 4 stars arranged in a diamond. The bailiff moved to intercept him. Sir, this is an active proceeding. I'm aware. The man's voice was commanding but calm. I'm General Richard Carver, United States Army, retired, and I need to speak regarding this case. Judge Brennan's eyes widened slightly. General, I don't know what your interest is here, but you can't just— With respect, Your Honor, I believe I can. Carver walked down the center aisle, his eyes locked on Thomas Walsh. That man you just called a debtor with worthless medals. That's Command Sergeant Major Thomas Walsh. And those medals he's holding aren't worth $50. They're priceless. The courtroom went dead silent. Walsh stared at the general, recognition dawning slowly in his eyes. Richard Carver? Hello, Tom. Carver's voice softened. Been a long time. Judge Brennan recovered his composure. General Carver, this is highly irregular, unless you have standing in this case. I'm a character witness, Your Honor, and I'm here to tell you exactly what those medals mean. Carver turned to face the judge fully. May I approach? Brennan hesitated, then nodded. Proceed. Carver walked to Walsh, who was trembling now, tears forming in his eyes. The general gently took the wooden case from his hands and carried it to the judge's bench. Your Honor, these are the Silver Star, the Bronze Star with Valor, and the Purple Heart with 2 oak leaf clusters. Carver's voice filled the courtroom. These medals were awarded to Command Sergeant Major Thomas Walsh for actions in Vietnam. The Silver Star was for single-handedly holding a position against enemy assault for 6 hours, while his platoon evacuated wounded. The Bronze Star was for pulling 3 men from a burning vehicle under direct fire. The Purple Heart clusters represent 3 separate wounds sustained in combat. Rothstein shifted uncomfortably. Your Honor, while that's admirable, it doesn't change the financial. I'm not finished. Carver's voice carried the edge of command now. He turned to look at Rothstein, and the attorney actually took a step back. You want to talk about character? About worth? Let me tell you about worth. He turned back to the judge. In 1968, I was a second lieutenant, 23 years old, green as grass. I was given command of a platoon in the Central Highlands. My sergeant major was Thomas Walsh. He was 32. He'd already done 2 tours. He knew the jungle, knew the enemy, knew how to keep young men alive. Carver's voice thickened with emotion. 3 weeks into my command, we walked into an ambush. My entire platoon was pinned down. I froze. I was terrified, useless, about to get every man under my command killed. And Sergeant Major Walsh grabbed me by my collar, looked me in the eyes, and said, "Lieutenant, they need you to lead, so lead." The courtroom was transfixed. He could have taken command, should have. But he knew I needed to become the officer my men deserved. So he stayed beside me, whispering instructions, teaching me how to fight, how to think, how to keep my men alive. We made it out, all of us, because of him. Carver's hands were shaking now. For the next 11 months, Sergeant Major Walsh kept me alive, kept my men alive. He taught me everything about leadership, about sacrifice, about what it means to serve. He saved my life 4 times, once from enemy fire, 3 times from my own inexperience. He looked at Walsh, who was openly crying now. When I left Vietnam, I promised him I'd never forget, that I'd honor what he taught me. I went on to serve 35 years. I commanded battalions, brigades, divisions. I advised generals and presidents, and every single decision I made, every life I saved, every mission I completed, it was because Thomas Walsh taught me how. Judge Brennan was leaning forward now, completely focused. So when you ask about the worth of those medals, Your Honor, understand this. They represent a man who gave everything to his country, who came home to nothing, who never asked for recognition or reward, who lives in poverty while men like me rose to wealth and position on the foundation he built. Carver turned to face Rothstein. And when you mock him, when you call his service trinkets, you insult every man and woman who wore the uniform. You insult the blood he shed and the years he sacrificed. The attorney's face had gone pale. Carver looked back at the judge. I'm here to pay his debt, all of it, right now. And I'm here to ask this court to recognize that some things can't be measured in dollars. That character, real character, is worth more than any ledger can show. Judge Brennan sat back in his chair, visibly shaken. The courtroom remained silent, the weight of Carver's words hanging in the air like smoke. Rothstein cleared his throat, trying to recover his professional composure. Your Honor, while General Carver's testimony is moving, it doesn't address the legal matter at hand. My client has a legitimate claim. Mr. Walsh signed a contract. He defaulted. The General's offer to pay is appreciated, but it doesn't absolve. Tell me about the contract, Judge Brennan interrupted, his tone completely changed. He was looking at Walsh now with different eyes. What was the loan for? Walsh's voice was rough. A business. I was trying to start a veteran support service. Help homeless vets get housing, job training, counseling. He paused. I mortgaged everything I had. Took a loan from Mr. Rothstein's client. But I couldn't make it work. Couldn't get the funding I needed. The overhead was too high. And his voice broke. I failed them. I failed the men I was trying to help. How many veterans did you help before the business failed? The judge asked. 43. Got them into housing. Got them into VA programs. But it wasn't enough. It's never enough. Carver spoke again, his voice gentler now. Tom, why didn't you call me? Why didn't you reach out? Walsh looked at him, his eyes red. Because you'd already given enough, Richard. You sent me money after I lost my wife. Paid for her funeral. I couldn't keep taking from you. I couldn't keep being a burden. A burden? Carver's voice rose. Tom, you saved my life. You made my career possible. Everything I have, everything I accomplished, it exists because you kept a terrified lieutenant alive long enough to learn his job. He turned to address the courtroom, his voice carrying the full weight of his rank and experience. After Vietnam, I went to war college, got my master's degree, commanded battalions in Desert Storm, became a general officer. I retired with full pension, with honors, with a legacy I'm proud of. And Tom? Carver pointed at Walsh. Tom came home to a country that spit on him. He couldn't find work because employers didn't want Vietnam vets. He took whatever jobs he could, construction, janitorial, night security. He raised 2 kids on his own after his wife died. Put both of them through college on a laborer's salary. Walsh was shaking his head. Richard, don't. Yes, Tom. These people need to hear this. Carver's voice was fierce now. He never complained, never asked for help, never sought recognition. And when he finally had a little money saved, when he could have retired quietly, what did he do? He tried to help other veterans. He spent everything he had trying to give other men what he never received: support, dignity, a chance. Judge Brennan leaned forward. Mr. Rothstein, who is your client? Who gave this loan? Rothstein shifted uncomfortably. Titan Capital Partners. They're a private lending firm. Interest rate? A pause. 22%. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Judge Brennan's face hardened. 22%. On a loan to a veteran trying to start a non-profit service. His voice was ice. Mr. Rothstein, your client is a predatory lender. Your Honor. The terms were clearly stated in the contract. Mr. Walsh signed, under duress, under desperation. Brennan cut him off. He turned to his clerk. Pull the full contract. I want to review every clause. While the clerk worked, Carver pulled out his phone. Tom, I'm calling my bank. I'm wiring the full amount right now. This ends today. Walsh grabbed his arm. Richard, no, I can't let you. You can't stop me. Carver's voice was gentle but absolute. You spent 11 months keeping me alive. Let me spend 5 minutes making a phone call. It's not the same. You're right. It's not. Because $30,000 is nothing compared to a life. Compared to 43 lives you helped save. Compared to the legacy you gave me. Carver's eyes were wet now. Tom, I have money I'll never spend. Houses I don't need. A pension that's more than I can use. And you're living in a place about to be foreclosed. That's not right. That's not justice. I don't want charity. This isn't charity. This is paying a debt that's 50 years overdue. Judge Brennan interrupted them. Gentlemen, I've reviewed the contract. He looked at Rothstein with undisguised contempt. Mr. Rothstein, this agreement contains at least 4 clauses that violate consumer protection laws. The acceleration clause is unconscionable. The fee structure is predatory, and the collateral seizure terms are borderline criminal. Rothstein's face flushed. Your Honor, I object. Object all you want. I'm invalidating this contract. Brennan's gavel came down hard. Mr. Walsh, you owe nothing. This debt is voided on grounds of unconscionable terms and predatory lending practices. The courtroom erupted. Walsh staggered, caught by Carver's steady hand. Furthermore, Brennan continued, his voice rising over the noise, I'm referring this matter to the State Attorney General's Office for investigation of Titan Capital Partners. Lending practices. Mr. Rothstein, you're dismissed. The attorney started to protest, then saw the look on the judge's face and thought better of it. He gathered his papers and left quickly, the door slamming behind him. Walsh was crying openly now, his shoulders shaking. Carver held him steady, this 4-star general supporting the man who'd once supported him. Judge Brennan stood. The courtroom fell silent. Command Sergeant Major Walsh, he said, and Walsh looked up at his old rank, a title he hadn't heard in decades. This court owes you an apology. I owe you an apology. You came here seeking justice. and I nearly denied it because I couldn't see past procedure to principle. He looked at the medals still sitting on his bench. These medals aren't worth $50. General Carver is right, they're priceless. Not because of the medal, but because of the blood and sacrifice they represent. Because of the man who earned them. Because of the lives he saved and the legacy he built. He picked up the wooden case carefully, reverently, and walked down from the bench. He handed it to Walsh personally. "Thank you for your service, Sergeant Major. And thank you for reminding me why this bench exists, not to enforce contracts blindly, but to ensure justice, real justice." Walsh took the case with shaking hands. "Thank you, Your Honor." Carver spoke quietly. "Tom, I'm not done. You tried to help veterans and ran out of money. So I'm going to give you the money. Not as a loan, as an investment. In you. In what you were trying to build. Richard, I failed. You ran out of resources. That's not failure. That's just math." Carver smiled. "I know a dozen other generals who'd invest too. We've been looking for veteran programs to support. Yours is exactly what we need. So you're going to take the money, you're going to rebuild your organization, and you're going to help veterans. Because that's what you do. That's who you are." Walsh looked at his old lieutenant, at the 4-star general who'd once been a terrified boy in the jungle, and saw something that made him finally nod. "Okay," he whispered. "Okay." 6 months later, Thomas Walsh stood in front of a renovated warehouse on the outskirts of Richmond, Virginia. The sign above the door read, "Walsh Veterans Foundation, Leave No One Behind." Inside, 40 beds lined the walls in clean rows. A commercial kitchen hummed with activity. 3 counselors worked at desks helping veterans navigate VA paperwork, job applications, housing forms. In the back, a training room held computers where men and women learned skills that would carry them back into civilian life. It was modest. It was functional. It was everything Walsh had dreamed of building. General Carver stood beside him, watching a young Marine, maybe 25, meet with a job counselor. The kid's left leg was prosthetic, visible below his shorts. He was nodding, taking notes, hope visible on his face for maybe the first time in months. 48 residents right now, Walsh said quietly. We've placed 23 in permanent housing. 17 have jobs. 3 are back in school. You did this in 6 months. Carver shook his head in wonder. Most nonprofits take years to get operational. I already knew what didn't work. This time I had the resources to do it right. Walsh paused. And I had help. The help had come from unexpected places. After the courtroom hearing, the local news had picked up the story. A reporter had been present for a different case, heard everything, and ran with it. Within a week, Walsh's story was national news. Judge Voigt's Dead of Vietnam veteran being exploited by predatory lender became a viral sensation. Donations poured in, small amounts mostly, $20 here, $50 there, from people who believed in what Walsh was trying to do. But the big money came from Carver's network. 8 retired generals, 4 colonels, and a dozen wealthy civilians who'd served or had family who served. They'd formed an investment group, contributed seed capital, established an endowment. More importantly, they'd given Walsh something he'd never had before: legitimacy. Letters of recommendation from flag officers opened doors. Connections to VA leadership got programs approved. Corporate partnerships materialized because CEOs trusted generals more than they trusted a lone veteran with a dream. "General Carver?" A woman's voice interrupted them. She was mid-30s, professional, carrying a tablet. The senator's office confirmed. He's coming next month to tour the facility. Carver nodded. "Thank you, Maria." Walsh watched her go. You hired me a PR director. You didn't tell me you hired me a PR director. You're too busy actually helping veterans to worry about publicity. Maria makes sure the right people know what you're doing, so the funding keeps coming, so we can expand." "Expand?" Walsh looked at him. "Richard, this is already more than I ever thought possible. This is one city, Tom. There are homeless veterans in every state. You've proven the model works. Now we scale it." Walsh felt overwhelmed. "I'm 79 years old. I don't know how to run a national organization. You don't have to. You hire people who do. Your job is to be the vision, the heart, the reminder of why this matters." Carver smiled. "And to keep telling young punks like me how to do our jobs." They walked through the facility together. Walsh stopped to talk to residents, learning their names, their stories, their needs. An Army staff sergeant struggling with PTSD, a Navy corpsman who couldn't hold a job because of nightmares, an Air Force tech sergeant living in his car after his marriage collapsed. Each one, Walsh treated with the same dignity he'd once shown to terrified young soldiers in Vietnam. He listened, he advised, he helped them see that being broken didn't mean being finished. In the training room, Walsh found something that made him stop cold. On the wall, someone had mounted a photograph. It was the courtroom scene from 6 months ago. Walsh standing before the judge, holding his medal case, Carver striding down the aisle. The moment everything changed. Below it, a plaque read, "Command Sergeant Major Thomas Walsh because he never left anyone behind." Walsh stared at it, tears forming. "Who put this up?" "The residents," Carver said softly. "They voted on it. They wanted you to know what you mean to them, that you're not just running a shelter, you're showing them that their service mattered, that they matter." A voice spoke from behind them. "You gave us something nobody else did, Sergeant Major." They turned. The young Marine with the prosthetic leg stood there, leaning on his cane. His name was Danny Rodriguez. "What's that, son?" Walsh asked. "Hope, Sergeant Major. Not the BS kind. Not the thoughts and prayers kind. Real hope. The kind that says, you served your country. Now let your country serve you back." Rodriguez's voice cracked. "I was 3 days from suicide when I walked through your door. 3 days. And you looked at me like I was still a Marine. Not damaged goods. A Marine." Walsh gripped the young man's shoulder. "You are a Marine. Always will be. I got a job offer yesterday. It's support for a defense contractor. Because of the training here. Because someone believed I was worth investing in." Rodriguez wiped his eyes. "I'm going to make it, Sergeant Major, because you didn't give up on me." After Rodriguez left, Walsh and Carver stood in silence for a long moment. "You know what the hardest part is?" Walsh said finally. "Knowing how many I couldn't reach. How many are still out there, still suffering. How many I failed before I got this right. Tom, you didn't fail anyone. The system failed them, and you're fixing the system, one veteran at a time." Carver pulled out his phone, showed Walsh a document. "This is a proposal I'm submitting to Congress next month. Federal funding for veteran transition programs modeled on your facility. $300 million over 5 years. Walsh's eyes went wide. That's your model going nationwide. 20 facilities in the first year, 50 by year 3, hundreds of thousands of veterans getting the support you pioneered." Carver smiled. "You're not just helping the people in this building, Tom. You're changing the entire approach to veteran care. I'm just doing what should have been done 50 years ago." "Exactly, and it's working. Because you understand something the bureaucrats never did. Veterans don't need pity. They need purpose. They need dignity. They need someone who sees them as the warriors they are, not the problems they've become." That evening, Walsh sat alone in his small office at the back of the facility. On his desk, the wooden medal case sat open. He touched each medal gently, remembering the moments that earned them. The fear, the pain, the brothers who didn't make it home. His phone rang. Unknown number. He answered. "Sergeant Major Walsh?" The voice was young, male, professional. "My name is David Brennan. Judge Harold Brennan's son. He wanted me to call you." Walsh sat up straighter. "Is the judge all right?" "He's fine. He's retiring next month, 25 years on the bench. And he told me that in all those years, your case was the one that reminded him why he became a judge. To ensure justice, not just enforce rules." Walsh felt his throat tighten. "He wanted you to know that he's donating to your foundation, and he's volunteering. Once a week, he wants to help veterans navigate the legal system. Pro bono, because you taught him that some debts can't be measured in dollars." After the call ended, Walsh sat in the quiet, feeling the weight of everything that had changed. 6 months ago, he'd stood in a courtroom being humiliated, his life's work dismissed as worthless. Now he was helping veterans across the city. Soon, across the country. General Carver found him there an hour later. "You okay, Tom?" "I keep thinking about that day in court, how close I came to losing everything, how ashamed I felt. But you didn't lose. You won. Because you refused to give up. Because your character, your service, it meant something real." Walsh looked at his old lieutenant. "You know what I realized? Those medals the judge called worthless? They were never about the medal. They were about the moment. About standing up when I wanted to quit. About carrying men when I could barely stand. About doing what needed to be done even when it cost everything. That's why they're priceless," Carver said quietly. "No." Walsh smiled. "They're priceless because they led me here. To this moment. To these veterans. To this second chance." He closed the medal case. "The medals were never the reward, Richard. This is knowing that the fight didn't end in Vietnam, that I'm still serving, still bringing people home." Carver saluted. After 50 years, he finally gave his sergeant major the recognition he'd always deserved. And Walsh, standing in his small office surrounded by the sound of veterans building new lives, saluted back. 2 old soldiers, 1 debt finally paid, 1 mission still ongoing.